College of Southern Nevada. If you're watching this video, you're in my CIT 173 class. And during the lesson 5, we're going to discuss Linux users, particularly local users and groups. The goals of this lesson is to understand the purpose and basic concepts of users and groups in Linux. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain the importance of users and groups for security and collaborations. You should be able to identify properties and files associated with user accounts and groups. You should be able to apply skills to create, modify, and delete user accounts in Linux, create, modify, and delete local groups in command line interface. So who is the user? User is an account that we will create or provide for personalities who will be using the system, Linux system. An account provides security boundaries between people and programs and defines who can do what on that system. We will call administrative user by the name super user, or also known as root. So if you hear me say root user, that means super user. That means an administrative user that pretty much have access to everything on the system. An administrative account has full access and user ID is 0. System users are not privileged account used by the system to run processes and services. We will learn about this in lesson 8 and 9. Do not interactively log in with the user account. So basically they are system users, not like regular users, like human users that will be using the system. And as I mentioned, regular user already. It's just account for human computer interaction. Regular users have various limitations with the system that would be set by an administrative user. So this one of the important files that we will be constantly addressing. Previously, you already learned command passwd to change a password. However, the file passwd has nothing to do with password specifically. It comes actually from the historically associated with passwords, but for the security reasons is no longer used to store passwords for users. However, it holds some information that is relevant to all users on the system. And that's how you can read the information about users in that file. So first it comes the name of the user right here. Then the placeholder for password. But as I mentioned, no longer password will be hold, hold in this file. Then user ID. So if it's a root user, it's going to be 0. Any other regular user starts after 1000. Group ID. Normally, group ID will be the same as user ID for the primary group. We also will learn how to create secondary groups, and then we will be able to assign completely different group ID. Okay. What kind of user? And it's basically a comment. So it says user 1 or our first user, or we can basically write whatever we want that will help us to identify and associate this with this particular user. And then location of the home directory. Home directory, it's a primary directory where user will store all its files. And default shell program. We, in a past lesson, learned how to edit shell program to do changes to your shell. So each individual user can edit this um, bash uh, shell and be able to make it unique to its preferences. Shadow file is a system file that contains information about the system user, and it's crucial part of Linux user account information. It's specifically for security passwords, right? And it has enhanced level of protection for password data. It can be readable only by a root user in a sudoer account. Sudoer account, it's a type of the user that allowed to use uh, command sudo, that stands for super user do, to elevate privileges. Etc shadow file, well, basically shadow file is in etc directory, and it's limiting access to encrypted passwords data. And it's not just encrypted. There are another way how system protect passwords. It's a little bit more advanced, but so you would understand, passwords not kept in the encrypted form, but in a hashed form. And hash is one-way function, so it cannot be reversed. Okay, so we're gonna learn how to manage user accounts in Linux with a command user add, and there we can use user options. You can see options below, and then new user's name. We can create a brand new user account automatically with this command. Each new user will receive a home directory with the same name and a primary group with the same name. If we have a user and we need to do some changes to this user, we would use command user mode. Again, options you see below, and the name of the user. You see example on the bottom. Additional, we can delete users. Let's just say we have a user who is no longer working for the company, and we no longer need to have this user account. We can remove the user. It's not a common practice to delete users. Usually we just lock user account. Uh, Changing user password. So in one of the first guided exercises, you were changing password for the student user, but you were logged in as a student user. Basically, any user can change password for themselves. However, only root user can change passwords for other users. And here is the command. Here's some specific information about shadow file and what you can see in the shadow file. So first, of course, login name for the user, then a hashed, not encrypted, but hashed password, when last password was changed, how many days uh, password can be valid, what is the minimum number of days password has to remain before it can be changed. Usually it's set at 0, so users can change their passwords, their own passwords when they need it. How many days before user must change password? So like a warning, you must change your password in 7 days, so you must change your password in 3 days. And we'll show how many days account been disabled. Like I told you previously, that is not common practice to completely remove user accounts, but rather disable them. And some accounts, they can be as temporary accounts. Let's just say we have a vendor who we not necessarily want to create a permanent user account, but we would rather have them with the temporary pass or with temporary account. And then we can set up an expiration date. And reserved field is not used it for the future use. So what is the group? Group is the collection of users shared the same level of permissions to perform different activities to access files and directories. Primary group, as I mentioned earlier, that every time we create a new user, the new user will receive a primary group with the same name as user's name. Supplementary groups, or as I call them, secondary groups. Uh, they're groups that can be created specifically for different tasks, and different users can be added into that group. And wheel is very special type of the group of users that control system with sudo command. They also known as sudoers on other Linux systems, depending on distribution. etc group, that's another really important file that you need to be familiar with. It contains information about different groups. System administrators can always verify the information about different groups and what users added in this group. Like in the bottom here, you can see will, and right now in the will is user student. To manage groups in Linux, similar to managing users, command to create a new group we would use is group add. Options you can see below to assign group ID and new group name. Here's an example. You can try to do this on your lab environment. To modify or make changes to the existing group, you would use group mod with options and group name. And obviously you can delete groups as well. Deleting groups is normal practice. Let's just say you no longer need the same group of people to collaborate on the same specific resource. The best way to remove them from getting access to that resource to delete the group. And this way, all the users will be removed from the group. Or you will have to remove all the users individually, but keep the group in case you will need to add or remove some other users in the future. Here are some more commands. So adding user to a group. Let's just say we created a group uh, for specific tasks, and we need to make sure only users that need to get access to that shared resource can actually access. So we will use command user mode with option A, upper G. Then we will list the group name and then username. And this way we append a group with the new user. With GP pass WD, we can remove user from the group. So key considerations, primary versus secondary group. Primary groups, users added by default and they cannot be shared. Secondary groups, they will be created by admin and they are shared groups. Group ID is a unique identifier for the group. It's just a number. It can be assigned automatically. So it will be next available number in the list, or we can choose what number we would like to use for that group ID. For the primary group, however, the group ID will be matching user ID. And that's pretty much it about groups and users. Please make sure you practice all the commands in your lab environment. And if you have any questions, make sure you reach out. Bye bye.